So I'm getting ready to start working on the Mini, and I think that the first thing I need to do is fix the catalytic converter. No, get off. Oh. So the first thing I need to do is introduce Major Tom. Say hi, Major Tom. He's my workshop cat. Actually, what I'm working on is getting my tools organized. My tool situation is not the best, so I put together a tool list of stuff I needed to order, and I'm going to get my tools that I do already have organized. So I'm going to take care of that right now. What do you think, Tom? Sound like a good idea? So my current situation is just a random collection of sockets and extensions and stuff I've inherited over the years. This has to get straightened out so that when I go to find a tool, I know what I'm looking for. This is all metrics and standard all mixed together, so we're gonna get that organized. I picked up this simple little deal from Lowe's to get my sockets organized, so I'm gonna go ahead and get all my sockets placed on this tray. What a difference about 15 minutes of organizing can make. I've finally got myself some organization going on here, so I know what I have and what I don't have, and this is going to make life a lot easier. It's amazing I had more stuff than I thought I did once I get it all organized. All right, so it's like the day before I'm going to tear into the Mini, and I've managed to go through all of my tools that I already have and figure out kind of what I need and what I don't have, and it turns out to be a lot. I have some basic hand tools, ratchets, and sockets and stuff. But in doing my research, I found out I need a lot of like deep well stuff and some kind of oversized stuff that I didn't have. So what I did was I relied pretty heavily on the channel Mod Mini and his video series where he takes the head off of a second generation N16 Mini and does a head replacement. And that's kind of been my Bible for this whole project. So what I did was I watched that video many times over, and I got myself a notebook and watched it with my finger just hovering over the pause button. Every time he took off a part, he's nice enough to mention what size tool he uses. And so I just made a note. I made a note of every tool and every size that he used. And then I got myself together a pretty good list of the stuff that I needed. And I'll go over that with you in a minute here. I've also got, by doing the same thing, a parts list together now. So I've gone ahead and ordered all the parts that I think I'm going to need. I'm sure there's going to be something I missed, but I did get all the parts I think ordered. And I'll go over those with you too here. And then the other thing that I've spent some time doing is just thinking about the organizational part of this. As someone going into this with little to no experience in a project this size, I'm most concerned or intimidated by the idea that I'm going to lose something or put the wrong bolt back in the wrong place, screw up some sort of electrical connection. Just, I don't even know what I don't know. So I've put a lot of thought into how to keep this organized. I'll go over that with you now too. So here we go. So for parts, of course, I've had to order a head gasket. That has not come in yet, but that's not going to slow me down from getting this thing disassembled. I did also go ahead and order myself a new timing chain kit. I found this one on eBay, I believe. It's right around 80 bucks, I think. Comes with the new tensioner and all that kind of stuff, the new cam sprockets. So that's one kit. I'm going to go ahead and do the timing chain at the same time. You'd be crazy not to. The car's due for it. I've also got myself a new front main seal, since I'm going to be right down there taking all that stuff apart. All my research indicates that you wouldn't put the old one back in, so it was like 15 bucks. I got myself a new main seal. I got a new set of head bolts so that we don't reuse the old head bolts. I have a new box of head bolts to use. I did go ahead and order myself an oil filter housing gasket. My understanding is that these are prone to failure as they get towards higher mileage, and in order to get to this, you have to take the whole exhaust manifold off to get to it, and I'm going to have it off already, so now would be the time. It was super cheap, like maybe 10 bucks or something like that. And I also got myself a new valve cover gasket. So I think for parts, I think I'm pretty well set. There's really not a whole lot to it that needs to go back on it, just new gaskets and seals. The head gasket kit came with a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure what's in that, so some of this might be redundant. It was really hard to find a kit for the N16. There's tons for the N14 and for the N18, but I had a hard time finding stuff for the N16. So I think I've got it all. Fingers crossed, and we'll find out soon enough. But the next step is to tear this thing apart, and for that I'm going to need tools. So as I track the budget for this project, it's very quickly becoming clear that I'm going to spend way more on tools than I am on parts. And if I had these tools already, this would be a pretty inexpensive project. But it turns out there's a lot of tools I didn't have. Some specialty stuff, some just basic hand tools that I just found out I didn't own. So I'm going to run you through the tools that I think it's going to take to do this job. Some of them are very specialized, starting with these serpentine belt tensioners. Takes the tension off of the serpentine belt so you can lock the tension off of it and get the serpentine belt off, and that way you can get down under the water pump and all that stuff. So they're specific to Mini. They come in a set. They were like $60 for the cheap ones. I went ahead and bought them. Hopefully I only ever need to use them once, and at some point I can sell them again, but I had to have them. The other thing that I had to have that was a specialty tool that's not in yet was the cam alignment tool. That's the little set of plates that lock the cams in place once you take the valve cover off. Very important to hold those cams in place, and it also comes with a tool to hold the crankshaft in place, the flywheel, so that the top and the bottom of the motor stay timed together. So that was very hard to find for that N16 motor. I had to look and look and look for it. It was like an $80 kit. I'm hoping it's the right one. So that's on its way. If it's not the right one, I'll be back on the hunt for one of those. Again, something I hope I only have to use once. So when the time comes when I get rid of this car, I'll sell it on. But can't do the job without it. So I went ahead and bought that. For specialty tools, I think that's it. But the one thing I found out right away that I didn't have that it takes to work on a Mini is a set of E sockets and a good set of T bits. So my in-laws, God love them, thank you Bob and Ruth, gave me a Harbor Freight gift card for Christmas. So I got a lot of my stuff I was able to get super cheap off of Harbor Freight. Everybody's got their opinions on Harbor Freight. For me, a guy who's going to use a lot of this stuff once, there's no other way to go. So I got a lot of my stuff off of Harbor Freight, including this set of Starpoint T bits. These are a 1/2-inch drive with the star shapes on it, and I made sure that all the sizes that are called for in this job are in this set. It was really cheap through Harbor Freight, like maybe $16 or something like that. And then also the E sockets, so the reverse of the T bit, so a star-shaped head on those, and those are also super cheap from Harbor Freight. But a couple times throughout this job, you'll run into E's and T's, and I did not have any of those, so I went ahead and bought those. The other thing that I needed was definitely going to be a torque wrench when it comes time to put this thing back together. My father-in-law generously gave me this really cool kind of older Craftsman 3/8 drive torque wrench. The problem I'm going to run into with this though is it only reads down to a minimum of 20 foot-pounds, and looking through the manual, which is one of the other things I bought, there's some stuff that's measured way under that for torque specs. So I went out and I did some shopping, and I was surprised to find the best deal I could find on a smaller torque wrench was actually an AutoZone of all places. This Duralast 3/8 drive goes down to 5 foot-pounds, and it was on sale for like $29, I think. And then I'm not a veteran, but my wife is, so we always, when we're shopping together, ask if they'll give her a veteran's discount, and AutoZone does, so it was another 10% off of that. So this was like a $26 torque wrench. I think it's going to do the job just fine between this and the bigger one. What else do we have here? I bought myself some deep well sockets because I knew I was going to need those for a few things. I also bought myself a little set of these hex drive socket drivers so that I can turn a regular like impact drill, hammer drill, into a torque wrench. It's not, or not torque wrench, an impact driver. It's not ideal, but it'll certainly work for this job, so that I can run some of the stuff in with this and then tighten it down by hand. So these were super cheap. Bought myself some extensions because I know there's a couple of long reaches where I didn't have enough extensions. Some swivels to get us some tight spots. In watching these videos, there's one area up behind the intake manifold where you're trying to get that off that requires a 10 mil that's really hard to get to. So I understand I haven't done it yet. So I went ahead and just bought one 10 mil ratcheting wrench. It seems to be the trick to get to that. This was cheap, I got it from Lowe's. You can buy them one at a time there. I did buy an O2 sensor socket so that you can get the oxygen sensor out without a big fight. It's got a groove up the side of it that goes over the wire. So this was sort of a specialty tool. I mean, you can use it on any car that has an O2 sensor, but I needed this. I got some body panel removal tools from Harbor Freight, just plastic clip removers so that I can get in and out of the body panels underneath. I need to pull the wheel well liners loose, and this seems to be the trick for those. I did also get just some little picks just to pull O-rings and stuff like that out. They're non-marring plastic ones. A set of plastic bladed scrapers for scraping any kind of residue off the engine surfaces that won't mar the surface. And then I kind of splurged on a couple of things. This little set of Tack Life sockets from Amazon, I needed a couple of pretty oversized metric sockets, like a 27 that I didn't have. And it was just cheaper to just buy a decent kit. This was surprisingly cheap on Amazon. So I just bought myself a decent, they're 1/2 inch drive. These are impact rated, even though I don't have an impact gun, in case I ever do. They were super, super cheap. So I went ahead and bought these. And then the real big splurge, when watching the Mod Mini channel, I noticed that he used this tool all the time. And while you could do this job without it, I don't want to. So I went ahead and bought myself an electric rechargeable ratchet so that you can get down in behind stuff and loosen and tighten without having to have the room to actually physically ratchet. I think this is going to be a lifesaver. So I went ahead and bought this. It was also pretty cheap. I want to say it was about 70 bucks on Amazon. So there's that. And while I was at it, I had a couple dollars left on my Harbor Freight thing, so I bought myself a couple pairs of just cheap mechanics gloves so I don't ruin my beautiful hands. So there we go. That's, I think, all the tools that I needed to buy. The other stuff that I'm going to need, I have a really cheap old floor jack that I bought at like a Cummins tool sale years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers those, but they used to come around and sell like Harbor Freight stuff at the local VFW. I've got a couple jack stands, I know, but they're going to be fine. And I've got an old floor jack that I can use because I do need to raise and lower the engine to reach some of the bolts. So I've got that. I think I've got pretty much everything that I need. So we're going to get into it 2 days from today. I'm going to start taking stuff apart. And the last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about today is my organization plan. So let's take a look at that. So right now I'm in my warm, heated basement shop where I do more of my woodworking and house maintenance kind of stuff. Unfortunately, the job I have to do has to be upstairs in the unheated garage. So for now, we're going to hang out here in the heat, and I'll show you some of the stuff that I've acquired to help me keep organized for this job. The number one tool has been this notebook. I have been making tons and tons of notes, including watching, again, Mod Mini's video, and I literally wrote down every step, every tool size, every step of the way so that I could just kind of follow that, whether it's above the car, under the car. It's probably overkill, but there's also a reason why I wanted to have this. Since I'm following a video, just in case we were having a problem with getting the video to play, we live out in the middle of nowhere, I wanted to have a hard copy of this. And plus I've made notes about parts and things that I've ordered. And so a notebook has been really helpful. The very first thing I purchased though, when I decided to do this, was the Haynes manual. It's like $27. It's super helpful, especially when it comes to like putting it back together so you know all of your torque specs and everything. A little bit of a pain because you have to flip back and forth through it so much to find what you want, but I think this is going to be a pretty valuable tool to have. I've also gone ahead and bought myself this pack of super cheap cellophane bags, resealable bags. My plan is, I watch people take this stuff apart and they're just kind of throwing bolts everywhere because they, I guess, know what goes back where. I don't want to take a chance that I put the wrong bolt in the wrong place and cross-thread something or wind up using the wrong length at some point and 10 steps down the road realize I've done something stupid. So the heat's kicking on, excuse the noise. So I got these bags, and every time I take some bolts off, I'm going to label the bag for what they are. I'm going to label it what step it was, and then I'm going to write that number in my notes so that I know exactly where that bag of nuts and bolts or whatever goes to. So that's part of it. And also picked up a package of different colored electrical tape so that every time I disconnect a fitting or an electrical connection, I'm going to wrap both ends of that connection in the same color tape just to make this thing go back together easier. And the last thing I picked up was a whiteboard so I could just make some notes, have a punch list going, and I'm also going to use that as my idiot board where I'm going to write down stuff like removing the flywheel lock tool, the things that you absolutely have to do before you start the motor back up or you're going to ruin it. So I think with all of those things, I'm going to stay pretty organized and I'm ready to go. So the next time we talk, I'm going to be taking bolts off this car and I'm looking forward to it. So we'll talk to you next time. Remember, if you're enjoying this and you want to see me learn and fail and get through this project and you want to help out, subscribe. Thanks.